So we'll go ahead and get started a bit. Hello, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you. My name is Angel. I am currently a software engineer studying for my master's in project management. My session today is something that I found very important and something that I noticed that a lot of companies and individuals tend to struggle with both on a regular basis. And so I kind of wanted to talk to maybe those people who may own a business or those people who may be looking to join companies. And mine is on creating an inclusive work environment. And when I say inclusive, I ask you, don't get it like mixed up with being a diverse work environment. Diversity and inclusion are two different things. First, diversity is something where you're represented. So it's like saying that a certain particular group of people or a certain particular person is represented in the company. They have a face, they have that value in that company. Now, however, when I mention inclusion, I mean creating value. I mean adding significance to your role in the company, have your presence being valued, who you are being valued, as well as on the other end, businesses. They have their own identity. Most of them have their own culture, and this culminates from people in the business. So whenever we're talking about inclusivity, you have to think of it from both perspectives because you can't have a company just accepting anyone and trying to make everyone feel welcome, but then the employees aren't making the company feel welcome and aren't trying to create a cohesive culture inside of their company. And so when we say inclusion, we mean both ends. And there are some very great benefits to having an inclusive work environment in your company. And as for employees, you want to be included in your company. And this, just for a business aspect, creates happier employees. I know that personally, when I joined my current company, I had purple hair. I interviewed with purple hair and I was so shocked that they hired me because I had kept hearing that, oh, Angel, if you dye your hair a natural color, you'll be more sellable to these companies. And I don't feel this is always correct. I feel that to a certain extent, we should try to adapt and fit in with companies. But if we always compromise and we always adapt as a worker to the company, it makes us unhappy. And on the other hand, as a business, if they're making all the concessions and they're just completely letting you do whatever you want, that business may not be happy as well because businesses tend to try to create a cohesive look and a cohesive environment for their clients or their customers or the people they're meeting with. So when we talk about happier employees, I want to say there's happier businesses as well when we create an inclusive work environment. Next, growing the culture. So company culture is something that is amazing and also ever changing and very complex. Whenever you enter a company, you immediately feel as if you either belong or don't. And that can be very trying for a person coming into a company. And I say this from both aspects. So as an employee, when you're going into a company, sometimes it may feel hard to breach that barrier, that invisible wall where it's like, hey, I want to get in contact and network with people, but it can be difficult at times. And as a business, we always struggle to make everyone feel welcome. And it's a never ending battle because everyone's different and we have to change strategies each time a new employee comes in. And so that's why when we say growing culture, when we become inclusive and we include everyone and we honestly value what they bring to the table instead of maybe how they look or maybe if they speak well or not, because some people don't speak as eloquently. Like, just to mention for myself, I have autism. There are times where I may not pick up on certain social cues, and in which aspect I would need the business I work with, or maybe an employee that I'm managing, to be like under a little understanding of the fact that maybe there is a little bit of a disconnect. And by doing this, you're creating that inclusion, which is also going to grow your culture. Next, you never know what new knowledge a person can bring into a company. Now, as I said, I'm focusing on both aspects. As a future employee for any company you're going into, that company is instilling new knowledge into you and training you very well and very extensively. I know for a fact that most training programs that companies put you through are very expensive and they heavily invest in you. On the other hand, businesses need to tend to open themselves up to the ideas that these new employees coming in may have some great ideas and great knowledge to share with your company. It may at times feel like I've been doing this for years, I may know better, but if we close ourselves off to the constant adaptability that can bring, we close ourselves off to new knowledge and then we lose our advantage in our markets. Next, the next good thing that inclusion can bring is increased productivity. And I'm gonna just blanket this one. When you're an employee and you feel included, you're more productive. Why? And it's because of some of the things I brought up before. It's because you feel included, so you're happier. You feel like you belong. Therefore, you feel like part of the family and part of the company that creates that culture, as I said. That being said, you feel like you want to do more, you want to produce more, and you want to create more value for the company because like, you feel like you're truly invested in that company. So if a business and an employee relationship can become that inclusive, it increases the productivity of the company, therefore increasing the revenues, increasing the production, maybe lowering costs, lowering times to market, things like that. And that's highly valuable when you're running your own company. Next thing, and the last thing that I'm going to bring up about inclusivity in the workplace per se in this aspect would be that yes, even though diversity is a different concept, it is not a foreign concept. By that I mean when you're more inclusive in your companies, and you're more inclusive as an employee to try new ideas that these companies are giving you, it creates a better diversity. And by diversity, I don't just mean people. There is diversity in knowledge and expertise as well. One piece of knowledge that I got given to me by my professors when I went through my university program was that be adaptable. We need to be adaptable and ever changing in any market or environment we're in. If we join a company and we're like just non-adaptable at all, like we aren't going to budge on how we are and we aren't going to learn anything new, that company isn't going to see value in us. The company isn't going to necessarily take us and utilize us to their best advantage. And that can create a problem for them and for us, especially when on their end, when they're investing so much money into us, and on our end, because we wasted a lot of time that we could have been building something productive with. That being said, I'd like to go into some more of the other benefits that are really helpful when creating companies and such, and when it comes to inclusion. So we want to know like why it's important, right? And I'm gonna just rehash on this. Inclusion is the difference between a person feeling welcome and a person just doing their job. It is the difference between going to work and going to do something you love. If you feel included, you feel like work isn't work. Now, I just want to say this. From an employee standpoint, we have to know when to be adaptable and when to stand our ground. So, as a transgender woman who is a bit different, who may have purple hair or pink hair at times, I have to know that sometimes when I go interview for a company, that I'm going to be rejected. And why? I don't say that on a negative level. But if you are in a customer facing position or you're in a position where you're constantly meeting with clients and things like that, some companies do have an image they want you to portray. And that we have to understand is part of their culture. On the other hand, some companies should understand that while purple hair may be a bit different, it's not always a negative aspect. Because when you create that inclusion, you're showing your clients that they are included as well. Because if you, as a business, and your employees or the people that are managing the clients are included together, then that'll pass on to your clients as well. Now, I do want to say that when you're going to apply for jobs and when you're going to be pursuing whatever you dream or want, you have to be able to recognize when a company or a certain opportunity may not be a fit for you. And by this, I don't mean that like educational wise or eligibility, things like that. So I'm going to give a good example. Say that I'm applying for Apple, and on the other hand, I'm applying for Google. While these companies are very similar, and they are both technological companies and they both want a software engineer with the same qualifications, the two companies have very and completely different cultures. And just going to take a moment to go down each company's like overview of like how they portray themselves. So for Apple, Apple portrays themselves as a sophisticated, a more polished look. Most of the employees that you see are very polished, very well put together. While saying this, they do also allow and include diversity. There are people with pink hair at Apple. There are people who may look different at Apple or may act different. So just because that their company has a certain portrayal doesn't mean that they're not inclusive. It just means that their culture is a certain way. They prefer polished, put together, well kept people. Not to say that the other company doesn't prefer that, but it's in a different way. So, say I went to interview for Google. Google is more focused on developers, things like that, like the comfort levels. So, if you took a tour of Google, you may find that a lot of people are wearing jeans and t-shirts and regular clothes and sweats and things like that. And that's because Google has a totally different culture in respect to Apple. They are more geared towards relaxation and creating that just kind of relaxed environment where you're all friends. And that's another completely fine culture, but that's what they chose. So, as a future employee in any company you're going into, you want to be able to recognize the culture that you're applying to be in. You want to take a note of it and say, is this a fit for me? So, most people think interviews are about like, oh, am I a good fit for that company? Like, does that company want me? What you should also be asking yourself is, after that interview, is do I want to work for this company? Do I want to be in this type of environment or this type of culture? And it's very important as employers or future employers on the business side to ask your future employees these questions. Ask them what they like how they feel they would fit in with your company and things like that. It's very important for both sides of the table to lay out their expectations, their cultures, and their values ahead of time. By doing this, we're able to create an environment where people can be themselves and maybe realize that, hey, this position wasn't for me. This job wasn't for me. But we recognize that on a mutual level, and it turns from a rejection into more of a mutual understanding that, hey, that's okay. I didn't get this position, but maybe I wasn't a good fit for that company. And that's when, as future employees, we need to recognize what companies will fit us. And now we're going to go into something I'm pretty sure most of you hear every day: networking. I tell people in my Toastmasters meetings, I tell people in my company, I tell people all around me, networking is key to everything. If you don't have a LinkedIn in this day and age, you need to get one. And I'm not here to promote LinkedIn, but I'm letting you know you need to get one. And why is that? Because eventually, what you're going to do is you're going to build a network of like minded people. Now, I'm not saying to exclude anyone here, because you will meet people along your path that may not be like minded, and still add them or network with them or connect with them on a personal level. And that's perfectly fine. But what the great thing about networking brings to the table is that all of you are like minded. All of you tend to have that perspective of pink hair is okay, or tattoos are okay, or things like that, like small little things. But you build a network of like minded people. And what that does is, when you're looking for a future employer, or an employer is looking for a future employee, that they look in their network first. You look within your network, and that's how you get the positions. And that's how you get positions that will truly fit you and truly help you in the long run. And then I'm just going to tie it back over to Toastmasters. Did you know today alone, I was in a Toastmasters meeting this morning with my fellow Toastmasters, and we were talking about COVID-19 vaccines. And I live in Maricopa County and here in Phoenix, and many of the vaccination locations that I was looking at were completely booked, and I couldn't get anything at all. It was in a Toastmasters meeting that another Toastmaster told me where I could go start getting my vaccination. And you know what? I had an appointment this morning right after I got out of that meeting. That is the value of a network of like-minded people. I'm looking for a job. Oh, I have to go and put in 30,000 resumes to find one position. Whereas instead of that, you could post a simple post on LinkedIn, or you could talk to your fellow Toastmasters and be like, hey, like, I'm looking for a new position. I'm looking for a new fit. Could you help me? And you know what's going to happen is they're going to connect you with people who are like-minded like you and who you will fit better with. And you'll find yourself spending less time looking for a position instead of creating value and getting to work in that position. And that is the value of inclusion. And when we're all inclusive, we create a network that really can move and change the world. So with that, I think I'm going to end my part of the speech, or the presentation per se. I'd like to open it up to any questions or any comments regarding this. So Amanda, if you want to come on and help me out with this. I don't know if anybody does have any questions or anything like that, but it's worth it.
That was great, Angel. Thank you so much. I'm like taking notes in the background here myself.
Thank you.
I've never been to a talk on this topic before, so I really appreciated it. Paul did comment to say that back a little bit ago that it was a great point. Company culture is a big thing, but I think a lot of companies have shifted their culture recently, especially since the pandemic started and more people now work from home.
Yes, that's actually very, very, very true. And the thing is that the culture may not have changed. Like, as I said, culture is ever adapting, right? So our culture is constantly changing. So we can't say that they shifted their culture, What happened is this: a lot of companies didn't know how to effectively handle virtual relationships. And that's one thing we all noticed is like the minute the pandemic hit, what happened? 90% of people joined LinkedIn. And LinkedIn started getting like busy. Like when before the pandemic, I'd look at LinkedIn and I'd be like, oh, there's like one new post. Now I look at it, there's like hundreds of new posts every day. And it's I think the pandemic shifted us for the better because we learned that we're able to connect and be more inclusive with people all around the world. And it only takes one video call. We may hear a, oh, you're muted, you need to unmute yourself. We may hear a, your video is not working, or a, you're choppy, reconnect. But I find that it helped us really connect with people all around the world. Like when I joined my company, my trainers were from India. So I got to connect with hundreds of people in India that I would have never known otherwise and who really helped me further my career. But so instead of companies thinking of like, oh, this is negative, we need to hurry up and get back in the office, what I challenge companies to think about is how can we combine this? How can we take like I tell people a lot is I would prefer a hybrid model of work where we go into the office like 2 or 3 times a week and then we work from home the rest. Why? Because it gives us still that connection, that physical connection of being in the office, being around our coworkers, things like that. But a lot of research has been put into it that like working from home makes me more productive. Like myself, I know that if I can watch a YouTube video while I'm sitting here coding an entire program, it takes my mind off of coding the program and I get less of a headache. Therefore, I'm able to do my work quicker. You can't really do that in the office because most of the time offices have restrictions and things such like that. So, whenever we're navigating this new vaccinated world, I challenge these employees and these businesses to think about how they can incorporate the best of both. How can we bring this connectivity, this inclusion that we've learned to have through the pandemic, being virtual, into our everyday lives moving forward? Because things are going to change. Things will never go back to the way they were, but they won't remain the same as they are now. So we need to find that happy medium. And that's what inclusion is about. Okay, next.
That's a great point. I know my husband's also a software engineer, and for his company, because they would always have that, weekly or whatever monthly social hour. And so now they play online games together once a week. There's a dedicated hour where they're just playing games together just to have that social connection while everyone's working from home.
Yes. And David has a point here. So yes, it does cause people to multitask. But a great way, a great way to end that, make people turn on their cameras. Make people prepare for the meetings. Like when you're sending out the meeting, say, hey, this is going to be a camera on meeting. This is going to be an interactive meeting. So while it is partially the employees that are doing it, because, we should be paying attention. Now, I will admit at times there are certain things that need to get done during the meeting, and that happens in person as well, whether or not you're in person or not. The only suggestion I could give there is make your meetings more interactive. If you notice someone who's maybe not speaking as much or maybe may be distracted, call them out. Ask them a question, something like that. As I said, make everyone turn on their cameras. Cameras are a great way to see everyone, especially when we're all at home every day, all day, and we don't really get to see people. So it's great to say, hey, this meeting is going to be cameras on. Everybody needs to be present. And I suggest give everybody at least a fair warning because, sometimes I'll be in pajamas and I'm like, y'all making me turn on my camera right now? So I say just give it a little bit of warning. But yeah, that's a great way to make people stop multitasking and pay attention, is when they have to have their camera on and they have to look at you, and when you're interactive. Anything else today? I will take any questions or talk about anything that comes off of this topic that you want to discuss.
One of the notes that I really liked that I took was to, at the start when you were talking earlier on, you were talking about, it helps people feel like family and they want to bring more value. And I feel like companies still miss that even today.
And you see, and I learned that from personal experience. When I joined my current company, because our trainers were from India, at first, I won't lie, I felt completely disconnected from my company. I felt like, what difference am I making? I'm just one of a million. And then it was actually when I met one of my trainers who invited me to a Toastmasters meeting, and I started networking within Toastmasters within my company, that I met a bunch of amazing people. And that grounded me and made me feel connected. And after that pivotal turning point, I started to be like, I actually want to be here. Like, my mentality changed from, oh, this is just a job, I should keep looking, things like that, to, oh my God, I want to be here. How can I further myself in this company? How can I create more value in the company? Things like that. Like the first thing I did, I don't think I've been with my company. No, I just hit the 6-month mark. And I've already spearheaded an initiative to open a Toastmasters club here in the United States for my company, because they had none here. And so it's things like that that help us to feel included, help create that inclusion. And it's all about networking. It's all about coming together and making people feel welcome. Like smaller group meetings, about 10 to 12 people. If you could break apart like 10 to 12 people in a group meeting, it's amazing, because you all kind of get to know each other over time. And you start to feel like, oh my God, these are my friends. These are my family. Even though they're my coworkers, these are people I genuinely care about. And then you start to care more about your company and who you're working for. And it really adds to that happiness you have at the end of the day. Instead of working an 8-hour day and saying I'm done and closing my computer, sometimes it may turn into a 12-hour day. Not all at once, don't get me wrong, but it may turn into a 12-hour day, and I'm completely fine with that, because I'm doing something I enjoy with people I enjoy. And that makes a huge difference when you're working in a company. Anything else?
Yeah, I love that. We've got good attendance, got quite a few people here. Anybody else has any more questions?
Anybody
or
can
comments?
ask me with comments, questions. If you want to hear me give my opinion on something that's completely off topic, I'm open to that too. I will answer anything today. I am in a good mood. I had a little bit of food before I came.
It's always a good start.
Yes, some good food to start off the meeting with, and then a great meeting. Like my goal today was just come in and help people understand something that I realized. And then, like I said, I'm transgender. I have autism. So at times, like just being transgender, sometimes when I walk into a place, I'm immediately scrutinized. With my autism, like I said, there's that disconnect sometimes socially when I'm speaking to people. And that can be difficult at times. Like, I'm one of those people, as some people may have noticed, I'm very direct. I get to the point and I don't sugarcoat things, and I speak very brisk and harshly. And I'm working on that, but it's just something that came naturally to me, because I don't tend to like wasting time buttering my words up per se. And so that's something I learned in Toastmasters and then I'm working on. But yeah, so if we can start to understand each other's differences and include everyone, even though we all have differences, and finding the common ground instead of our differences, we can all feel included and it creates a better working environment. Sorry.
Let's talk about communication. I love that because you just mentioned how sometimes you feel like you can come across really abruptly. Have you upset colleagues that you've then had to
One
do
time, yeah.
damage control? Like, what did you
Actually,
do? What happened?
so in my internship, like I had an internship and I sent out an email and said, we need this done. Please get it done. Thank you. And I got coached on that because they were like, you have to understand that while you speak that way, some people want you to make a whole paragraph out of it. Like, oh, hello. It was so nice to talk to you today. I really would like to catch up with you sometime. Oh, and by the way, while you're doing that, can you please check into this? Yeah, and I wasn't used to that. I was just used to, hey, we need to get this done. Can you get it done, please? Thank you. So that was my communications to like people in the company. And they were like, no, Angel, you need to learn to be a little bit softer. And I learned that over time. But as I said, as I said with communication, we all have to understand that everyone's communication style is different. That something that may seem offensive, if we don't take it personally and truly try to understand what the other person's saying, sometimes we find out that they're just trying to get things done or they're just trying to convey a message maybe in a different way than we may perceive it. And that's why it's always good to ask the person. Like, say if I said, Amanda, can you get this done by tomorrow? Thank you. And you're like, that's kind of like harsh. And instead of like just having this attitude, bad feeling towards me and then letting it affect our relationship, communication plays the key is where you could come say, hey, Angel, I appreciate that, you feel confident to have me do this or whatnot, but maybe you want to speak a little better. I wouldn't say better, like this is where I would struggle to find the words for it, but like sugarcoat it, like beat around the bush a little before you hit the bush. Uh, um, just like explain it to the person and then maybe offer an example because examples really help when trying to demonstrate what you're trying to give that person. But communication, like I said, networking is communication. You have to communicate to network.
Yeah. Do you find sometimes you write that email and it's direct and then you have to sit with it for a minute before you send
No.
it and then softened it?
What I do now is I'll look at who I'm sending it to, and I know the people I'm sending it to. So like just per se, if I'm sending an email to Karen, who's the club growth director, I can be brisk and harsh, and I know she won't take it in a negative aspect because she's kind of the same way. But if I'm sending an email out to my HR for my company, I'm going to make it a whole paragraph because I know that I need to pet the cat before just throwing it out the window.
I'm loving your analogies today.
Pet the cat before throwing. That's a new one. I've never come up with that one. But you know what I mean? Like you have to like assuage their feelings before telling them what to do.
Yes. I feel like you have that true engineer brain.
Yeah. Mate, just I'm sorry you're making me laugh about this. But yeah, it's interesting to learn people and to find out I'm talking to this person today. I need to speak to them this way. And like as future employees or as business executives, that's something everyone has to think about from top down. Like that's one thing I can say that I've ever since I learned how to do that. I have great connections with some of the top people in my company. Like one of the district heads I talk to, my senior project manager, me and her speak every day. And it's because I learned to effectively communicate not by not by just changing my style, but by noticing and taking into stock who I'm speaking with. Like, one cat is not the same as the other. A Siamese is not going to act like a Garfield. You can't expect the Siamese to be quiet, just like you can't expect the Garfield to stop eating. They're two different cats, so you have to treat them in two different ways. And that's where that inclusion comes in. Inclusion isn't about seeing everyone the same way. It's about seeing the differences and saying, yeah, we're all different. We all have differences and we're all going to be different. But we all have something in common as well.
Yeah, I love that. I know, just for example, like I know sometimes my husband will be writing, that engineer brain, he'll write an email and it's so direct. And sometimes he'll come to me and he's like, how does this sound? And I'll come in and add an extra,
Yeah.
several sentences to soften it up. Do you recommend people sometimes have somebody that they can bounce that sort of
Yeah,
communication
and
off?
that like I said, that could be very important as well. Having a mentor. Mentors. That's one of the key aspects in Toastmasters and in my company as well. We all have mentors. Like, even in my personal life, I'll be drafting essays or drafting letters and I'll send it to my best friend and have my best friend look over it because I'm like, does this sound okay? Is this okay? Like, even though I know how to fatten the cat up a little, it may not be fat enough or it may be too fat. So it's always great to have someone read over all of your messages or your emails or something like that. I mean, yeah, it just really depends. And it's always great to have a mentor, a point of contact. And that's why it's so crucial to communicate and build your network up and be inclusive, because that one person, whereas, like I said, I have purple hair, that one person I may find to be a stick in the butt, like very uptight, very polished, very put together per se, is that one person who may be able to help me break out of that cycle. So you never know. Even though you may not be able to work with them every day, they can add an aspect to your life or your career that can greatly benefit you and them. It's like opposites attract.
Yeah, that's great. So I have so much respect and value for my mentors in life. David posted that he has I have someone I read all important email. At work, it's my lead. At home, it's my wife. Okay, so
Yep.
at work, he has his lead.
Trusty partner at home. The wife is always the best person to read things, or the husband's the best person to read things. And that's great because that's, like I said, that's your best friend. When you're married, normally, I won't say for everyone, but normally when you get married, that's your best friend. So it's always great to have someone look over it, especially if they're really close to you and they know you well.
Yeah. And David says that is why I have them read them because I make mistakes. Thanks, David.
Mine used to sound like that. Oh, I just remember the emails I used to send. This I sent one piece of paper after a meeting for a sprint and said, "This needs to be updated now. Do it. Thank you." and my manager's like, "Angel, it's okay. It's okay not to beat the cat. You can pet it." Yeah, so it's very important. Like, it's always important to have someone who can hold you accountable. And that goes both ways, though. The employees can hold their business accountable and the business can hold the employees accountable. And, it's all about balancing. It's all about balances. It's like finding that happy place. Like I said, we can both be inclusive, but we can't be overly inclusive to where it becomes a compromise on one party's part more than the other. Because then it's no longer inclusion, it's just compromising. Like, oh, I'll hire you just because I need you for this.
Yeah.
Yep.
And have you found any great ways, especially for new employees coming into a company in a virtual environment these days? Before, some people might have worked in an office together and now they're working virtually, but they've had that personal interaction where they're not having that now, and they might be a new employee coming in. And I'm not sure if that was actually what you were referring to. That was your situation working with the new company. What do you guys do? Social virtual things?
Not really.
Okay.
So my advice to any employee coming into a new company, especially a large one, like my company's global. We have hundreds of thousands of employees. My advice to any employee per se coming in is to speak up. Don't stay silent. Interact. Like that's what I said, interaction, networking, things like that. Communication really builds those relationships, even in a virtual environment. Like, there's my mentor from work. His name's Zarnavid. I have never met him in person, and yet this is like one of my best friends outside of work now. Why? Because we each took the time to communicate with each other. We each took the time to have video chats, things like that. That all it takes is a little bit of effort. We're all sitting at home, not really doing much. We could just turn on a Zoom call and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And just kind of talk about anything. And I think that's where a lot of businesses and employees fail to understand is that some of these relationships can be taken outside of work. They can be. It can be carefully managed. Now, I will say this: if it's a manager and an employee, like someone who's under them, I would say to create that Chinese wall where if there's any conflict, it doesn't bring over. But most of the time, I don't think it really gets to that level because people feel welcome. Not everyone's not going to always agree. There will be disagreements and there will be arguments and there will be this and that, even in virtual environments. The only difference is in a virtual environment, I can hang up on you. The only difference.
I wish I had that option.
Hang up on you.
I wish I had that option back in the day working in corporate.
Yeah. But it's basically like just creating that connection. And we have to realize that when we were in person, it was easier to create that connection because we're always around each other. In virtual, we have to click the button to start the Zoom meeting. And some of us are just too into our TV shows or our Netflix to do that. We have to realize that if we put some time, say 30 minutes aside a day, just to connect with another person that we know is coming into the company, or as a new employee, just put that 30 minutes aside and connect with your manager. Connect with someone who's in leading you or training you. It really makes a difference on how you'll feel connected. And you never know. Like I said, I connected with my trainer and I got a bunch of tips on how to do my work better. And I passed training a lot easier than if I'd have done it just on my own without any advice. Not to mention, like I said, became one of my best friends outside of work. So even after the training relationship ended, I still talk to this person to this day, almost every day. And so you never know who you could become friends with. And that's the thing, that's the benefit of it being virtual. You can connect with someone across the world. All you have to do is put a little effort into it. That's a whole nother session. Breaking from laziness.
I think that was a couple of sessions earlier.
Probably. Break from your laziness. Just get out there and do things. Like we used to go out there and do events. We used to go to the movies. You used to go to corporate events. Instead of doing that, join a Zoom session. Join that little HR meet and greet over WebEx. Whatever it takes to kind of just put that effort in and build those relationships. It may feel awkward. It may feel out of your comfort zone, but if we don't push ourselves out of our comfort zone, we'll never grow. We'll never become who we're meant to be if we don't constantly push ourselves.
Yeah, I like that. I wanted to ask, have you ever seen a company do something really well to make everybody have that inclusion in the workplace? Do they send out an email or what, like something?
I will say a company did that, but it didn't include me. I'll explain this. And I'm not going to give the company name because I don't want to speak ill of them, especially if this is going to be in public. But in my experience, when I joined the company, I had blonde hair like now. And I got hired, blah, blah, blah. And I'm a developer. I'm a software engineer. So the first thing I did was ask my manager, can I dye my hair a different color? I wanted a different color. I'm one of those people who like to express myself colorfully. And they said it was fine because I wasn't facing any clients or customers. But the minute I walked in my first day, the looks I got. It was very inclusive. They did very well on creating an inclusive environment and bringing everybody in. But like I said, the pandemic changed things where I have a pacemaker. I try to stay home as much as I can, even if you're trying to make me go into the office, because I don't want to get sick. I don't want to end up having that complication. And that was one thing they didn't understand because they were still stuck in the mindset that people needed to be in the office to connect. And another thing I noticed was like another employee had a birthday at the same time that we all joined, and they like really celebrated it, posted a video on social media and everything. And then, like I said, when my birthday rolled around, nothing happened. Oh, it's your birthday? We didn't know. It's small things like that that can make an employee feel alienated. And my company, my current company, does it very well as well. Like I did say, at first there was a little bit of shakiness, but what I think is that it was just the trainer I was with at the time. I don't think it was the company as a whole. But the company as a whole sends out, like my company sends out these weekly invites for HR events that we all go on WebEx with, and we all connect with each other and things like that. So it really helps you feel included. And not to mention, the culture of the company is very inclusive as a whole. They value people from all different backgrounds and perspectives. As long as you can do the job and do well, that's what they want. And that's one thing I valued in my Toastmasters as well. Most Toastmasters believe the same thing. Everyone's welcome. Everyone can do it. And that's something that's very important. And that's inclusiveness. Yeah, that's my company examples.
Yeah, they were great examples. I really appreciate that. I don't know, does anybody else have any last questions, comments? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Was this a 15-minute session? I think we're almost.
Yeah, any questions, like anything, you can ask me anything. I will open the floor to that. Now, don't make it too crazy. I could say ask anything. Don't make it too crazy.
Be kind. Do the fat cat. Is it the fat cat? I don't have your analogies down as well as you do.
Stroke the cat before you throw it out the window.
That's the one. There we go. Poor cat. Good thing they always land on their feet.
Yeah, exactly, right?
This has been a really great session. Super informative. I'm honored to have been moderator for you.
The thing I want people, especially new employees coming in, to remember when you're interviewing is that not every company will be a good fit for you. And you need to be able to recognize that. And networking. Build your network. add me on LinkedIn if you want. I don't think I put my LinkedIn profile here, but it's all good. You'll find a way to find me.
We've got a couple more comments. Alicia said, "Thank you, Angel. I love the conversational exchange between the two of us. You're right. A little effort goes a long way to connect." Absolutely. So thank you, everybody. I think
Thank you,
we're
everyone.
at time. Have a great weekend, everybody.